Tisha B'Av is an annual fast day in Judaism which commemorates the anniversary of a number of disasters in Jewish history, primarily the destruction of both the first and second temples in Jerusalem. Tisha B'Av is regarded as the saddest day in the Jewish calendar, and it is thus believed to be a day which is destined for tragedy. Tisha B'Av falls in July or August in the Western calendar. The observance of the day includes 5 prohibitions, most notable of which is a 25-hour fast. The Book of Lamentations, which mourns the destruction of Jerusalem, is read in the synagogue, followed by the recitation of kinnot, liturgical dirges that lament the loss of the Temple and Jerusalem. As the day has become associated with remembrance of other major calamities which have befallen the Jewish people, some kinnot also recall events such as the murder of the 10 martyrs, massacres in numerous medieval Jewish communities during the Crusades and the Holocaust. History Biblical origins according to Judaism. According to rabbinic tradition, the sin of the 10 spies produced the annual fast day of Tisha B'Av. When the Israelites accepted the false report, they wept over the false belief that God was setting them up for defeat. The night that the people cried was the 9th of Av, which became a day of weeping and misfortune for all time. Destruction of the temple. The fast commemorates the destruction of the first and second temples, which both occurred on Av 9, about 655 years apart. In connection with the fall of Jerusalem, 3 other fast days were established at the same time as the 9th day of Av. These were the 10th of Tevet, when the siege began, the 17th of Tammuz, when the first breach was made in the wall, and the 3rd of Tishrei, known as the fast of Gedaliah, the day when Gedaliah was assassinated. The 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av are known as the 3 weeks, while the days leading up to Tisha B'Av are known as the 9 days. 5 calamities. According to the Mishnah, 5 specific events occurred on the 9th of Av that warrant fasting. The 12 spies sent by Moses to observe the land of Canaan returned from their mission. Only 2 of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, brought a positive report, while the others spoke disparagingly about the land. The majority report caused the children of Israel to cry, panic and despair of ever entering the Promised Land. For this, they were punished by God that their generation would not enter the land. Because of the Israelites' lack of faith, God decreed that for all generations this date would become one of crying and misfortune for their descendants. The first temple built by King Solomon and the Kingdom of Judah was destroyed by the Babylonians led by Nebuchadnezzar in 587 BCE after a 2-year siege, and the Judeans were sent into the Babylonian exile. According to the Talmud and Tractate Ta'anit, the destruction of the first temple began on the 9th of Av and the temple continued to burn throughout the 10th of Av. The second temple built by Ezra and Nehemiah was destroyed by the Romans in August 70 CE, scattering the people of Judea and commencing the Jewish exile from the Holy Land. The Romans crushed Bar Kokhba's revolt and destroyed the city of Betar, killing over 500,000 Jewish civilians on July 8, 135 CE. Following the Bar Kokhba revolt, Roman commander Turnus Rufus plowed the site of the temple and the surrounding area, in 135 CE. Note: due to a 2-year difference within the Hebrew calendar, the years in which the first and second temple were destroyed have been disputed. Though it has been accepted by most historians to refer to the most modern interpretation of the calendar. Other calamities. Over time, Tisha B'Av has come to be a Jewish day of mourning, not only for these events, but also for later tragedies. Regardless of the exact dates of these events, for many Jews, Tisha B'Av is the designated day of mourning for them, and these themes are reflected in liturgy composed for this day. Other calamities associated with Tisha B'Av, the episode of the golden calf in which the Hebrews, after their exodus from Egypt, reintroduced idolatry as a form of spirituality. The First Crusade officially commenced on August 15, 1096, killing 10,000 Jews in its first month and destroying Jewish communities in France and the Rhineland. The Jews were expelled from England on July 18, 1290. The Jews were expelled from France on July 22, 1306. The Jews were expelled from Spain on July 31, 1492. Germany entered World War I on August 1, 2, 1914, which caused massive upheaval in European Jewry and whose aftermath led to the Holocaust. On August 2, 1941, SS Commander Heinrich Himmler formally received approval from the Nazi Party for the final solution. As a result, the Holocaust began, during which almost one-third of the world's Jewish population perished. On July 23, 1942, began the mass deportation of Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto, en route to Treblinka. Most religious communities used Tisha B'Av to mourn the 6 million Jews who perished in the Holocaust, including special kinnot composed for this purpose. On the 10th of Av the following events took place: AMIA bombing of the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, killing 85 and injuring 300 on July 18, 1994. 10 Av, AM 5754. Israel's unilateral disengagement plan, also known as the Disengagement Plan, Gaza Expulsion Plan, or Ishnatcut, began 10 Av, AM 5765. August 15, 2005. Laws and customs: Tisha B'Av falls in July or August in the Western calendar. When Tisha B'Av falls on the Shabbat, observance of Tisha B'Av takes place on Sunday. No outward signs of mourning intrude upon the normal Sabbath, although normal Sabbath eating and drinking end at sunset, rather than nightfall. The fast lasts about 25 hours, beginning at sunset on the preceding evening, lasting until nightfall the next day. In addition to fasting, other pleasurable activities are also forbidden. Main prohibitions: Tisha B'Av bears a similar stringent nature to that of Yom Kippur. In addition to the length of the fast, which lasts about 25 hours, beginning at sunset on the eve of Tisha B'Av and ends at nightfall the following day, Tisha B'Av also shares the following 5 prohibitions: no eating or drinking, no washing or bathing, no application of creams or oils, no wearing of shoes, no marital relations. These restrictions are waived in the case of health issues. For example, those who are seriously ill may eat and drink. On other fast days, almost any medical condition may justify breaking the fast. In practice, since many cases differ, consultation with a rabbi is often necessary. Ritual washing up to the knuckles is permitted. Washing to cleanse dirt or mud from one's body is also permitted. Additional customs: Torah study is forbidden on Tisha B'Av, except for the study of distressing texts such as the Book of Lamentations, the Book of Job, portions of Jeremiah and chapters of the Talmud that discuss the laws of mourning. In synagogue, prior to the commencement of the evening services, the paroshe is removed or drawn aside, lasting until after the fast. The paroshe is the curtain, or screen that normally covers and adorns the Aron Kodesh containing the Sifrei Torah. According to the Rima, it is customary to sit on low stools or on the floor, as is done during Shiva, from the meal immediately before the fast, the Suda Hamafseket, until midday. It is customary to eat a hard-boiled egg, and a piece of bread dipped into ashes during this meal. The Beit Yosef rules that the custom to sit low to the ground extends until one prays Mincha. If possible, work is avoided during this period. Electric lighting may be turned off or dimmed, and cannot recited by candlelight. Some sleep on the floor or modify their normal sleeping routine, by sleeping without a pillow, for instance. People refrain from greeting each other or sending gifts on this day. Old prayer books and Torah scrolls are often buried on this day. The custom is to not put on tefillin for morning services of Tisha B'Av, and not a talit, rather only wear the personal talit katan without a blessing. At Mincha services, sit and tefillin are worn, with proper blessings prior to donning them. And a fast: although the fast ends at nightfall, according to tradition, the first temple continued burning throughout the night and for most of the following day, the 10th of Av. It is therefore customary to refrain from eating meat, drinking wine, bathing, cutting hair, doing laundry, listening to music, making a Sheheshianu blessing until midday of the following day. When Tisha B'Av begins on Saturday night, the Havdalah ritual at the end of Shabbat is truncated, without a blessing over wine. After Tisha B'Av ends on Sunday evening, another Havdalah ceremony is performed with wine. The laws of Tisha B'Av are recorded in the Shulchan Aruch Chaim 552-557. Services. The scroll of Asher is read in synagogue during the evening services. In addition, most of the morning is spent chanting or reading Kinnot, most bewailing the loss of the temples and the subsequent persecutions, but many others referring to post-exile disasters. These later Kinnot were composed by various poets who had either suffered in the events mentioned or relate received reports. Important Kinnot were composed by Eliezer HaKalya and Rabbi Judah HaLevi. After the Holocaust, Kinnot were composed by German-born Rabbi Shimon Schwab and by Rabbi Solomon Halberstam, leader of the Bobov Hasidim. Since Israel's unilateral disengagement from Gaza, some segments of the religious Zionist community have begun to recite Kinnot to commemorate the expulsion of Jewish settlers from Gush Katif and the northern West Bank on the day after Tisha B'Av, in 2005. In many Sephardic congregations the Book of Job is read on the morning of Tisha B'Av. A paragraph that begins Nahum is added to the conclusion of the blessing B'nai Yas Halayim recited during the Amidah. The prayer elaborates the mournful state of the Temple in Jerusalem. The concluding signature of the blessing is also extended to say Blessed are you, O Lord, who consoles Zion and builds Jerusalem. Various modern Orthodox rabbis and conservative rabbis have proposed amending Nachum as its wording no longer reflects the existence of a rebuilt Jerusalem under Israeli sovereignty. Chief Rabbi Shlomo Goren, for example, issued a revised wording of the prayer, and Rabbi Chaim David HaLevi proposed putting the prayer's verbs relating to the temple's destruction into the past tense. However, such proposals have not been widely adopted. History of the observance. In the long period which is reflected in Talmudic literature, the observance of the 9th day of Av assumed a character of constantly growing sadness and asceticism. By the end of the 2nd century or at the beginning of the 3rd, the celebration of the day had lost much of its gloom. Rabbi Judah HaNasi was in favor of abolishing it altogether or, according to another version, of lessening its severity when the fast had been postponed from Saturday to Sunday. The growing strictness in the observance of mourning customs in connection with the 9th day of Av became pronounced in post-Talmudic times, and particularly in one of the darkest periods of Jewish history, from the 15th century to the 18th. Maimonides, in his Mishneh Torah, says that the restrictions as to the eating of meat and the drinking of wine refer only to the last meal before fasting on the 8th day of Av, if taken after noon, but before noon anything may be eaten. Rabbi Moses of Kusi wrote that it is the universal custom to refrain from meat and wine during the whole day preceding the 9th of Av. Rabbi Joseph Caro says some are accustomed to abstain from meat and wine from the beginning of the week in which the 9th day of Av falls. And still others abstain throughout the 3 weeks from the 17th of Tammuz. A gradual extension of prohibitions can be traced in the abstention from marrying at this season and in other signs of mourning. So Rabbi Moses of Kusi says that some do not use the tefillin on the 9th day of Av, a custom which later was universally observed. In this manner all customs originally designated as marks of unusual piety finally became the rule for all. In Israel, restaurants and places of entertainment are closed on the eve of Tisha B'Av and the following day by law. Establishments that break the law are subject to fines. Outside of Israel, the day is not observed by most secular Jews, as opposed to Yom Kippur, on which many secular Jews fast and go to synagogue. According to Halakha, combat soldiers are absolved of fasting on Tisha B'Av on the basis that it can endanger their lives. The latest example of such a ruling was issued during Operation Protective Edge by Israel's chief rabbis, Rabbis David Lau and Yitzhak Yosef. When Menachem Begin became prime minister, he wanted to unite all the memorial days and days of mourning on Tisha B'Av, so that Holocaust Remembrance Day and Memorial Day would also fall on this day. Contemporary opinions, although agreeing that the destruction of the two temples in Jerusalem had threatened the very survival of the Jewish people, Isma Shush, former chancellor of the Conservative Jewish Theological Seminary of America, downplayed its significance as having no appeal to the modern Jew who no longer prays for the restoration of the sacrificial cult in Jerusalem. He viewed the day as having meaning since it had absorbed the a memory of other national disasters. In Reform Judaism too, mourning the destruction of the temple in such an elaborate fashion is not regarded as meaningful, as Reform has never assigned a central religious role to the ancient temple. Berl Carlson, a leader of the labor Zionist movement, criticized his party's youth movement for holding campfires on Tisha B'Av in 1936. He believed that even secular Jews could find some meaning in traditional observances. A 2010 poll in Israel revealed that some 22% of Israeli Jews fast on Tisha B'Av, and 52% said they forego recreational activity on this day even though they do not fast. Another 18% of Israeli Jews responded that were recreational spots permissible to be open they would go out on the eve of the fast day, and labeled the current legal status religious coercion. The last 8% declined to answer. In relation to the creation of the State of Israel as the main focus of the day recalls the destruction of the First and Second Temples and a subsequent scattering of the Jewish nation into exile. The modern-day re-establishment of a Jewish state in the Holy Land has raised various attitudes within Judaism as to whether Tisha B'Av still has significance or not. Some in the conservative movement view the establishment of the State of Israel and the restoration of Jewish sovereign independence as a great salvation and conclude that it would be correct to commemorate this historic fact by concluding the fast after the midday service. Others opine that the fast should be completed and cite the fact that even during the Second Temple period the fast was observed. Following the Six-Day War, the national religious community viewed Israeli unregistered trademark as territorial conquests with almost messianic overtones. The conquest of geographical areas with immense religious significance, including Jerusalem, the Western Wall and Temple Mount, was seen as portentous. However, only the full rebuilding of the temple will engender enough reason to cease observing the day as one of mourning. Other traditions, classical Jewish sources maintain that the Jewish Messiah will be born on Tisha B'Av, though many explain this idea metaphorically, as the hope for the Jewish Messiah was born on Tisha B'Av with the destruction of the temple. See also, Jewish fast days, Jewish holiday. References. External links. Tisha B'Av worldwide event, Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, Penanu Halacha, The Laws of Tisha B'Av.